After a good meal and a few beers, I've asked the owner for the check and got a blank stare. I repeated my request. Still nothing. Then something seemed to click for the owner. I leaned back in my chair, satisfied. Bunny, you've just asked him twice for the... After 9 months of studying, was I really ready for Japan? 3 years in Japan, I only reached an advanced beginner to lower intermediate level. No kanji knowledge, basic comprehension and conversation skills. In 2015, I've moved to UK. Then, I spent a decade without touching Japanese. But in February 2024, we decided to work towards moving back to Japan long term. Step 1. Acquire Japanese. For real this time. 9 months of daily study later, with kanji, walk-up cramming and immersion, my first trip to Japan in a decade was here. Check out my 9 months video for a detailed dive into my language learning progress, if you haven't seen it already. Family visits, looking at houses for sale, and just visiting our favorite places, like Okutama, Sasuke Inari Jinja, and Tsurugaoka Hachimanga, where we got married oh so many years ago. My goal was to test my comprehension in the wild, as much as I could with a partner fluent in both English and Japanese. Can I navigate the traveling around Japan? Can I communicate in konbini? Can I order food? Can I speak and understand my Japanese family? Can I simply comprehend what is going on around me? Am I back to the level I was 10 years ago? Better? Surely not. Over 24 hours of travel with a mad dash through the Charles de Gaulle airport and barely making the connection to Japan. And now, I stood at Japanese border control, running through the same phrases over and over in my head. The officer motioned for me to come forward. Ohayo gozaimasu. Ohayo gozaimasu. A few moments of checking documents and an awkward silence later that felt like an eternity. And then, stump. I was through. Did I actually just worry for nothing? Then the first real problem. No baggage. The Charles de Gaulle connection had eaten our suitcases, so my better half spent the next 30 minutes sorting things out with the airport attendant. Brain dead from no sleep, I zoned out through the entire exchange. We hit arrivals, only to realize the limo bus wasn't coming until 10. It was 6 a.m. Critical adult brain decision time. Let my better half figure out the trains, do Anki instead. Because even jet-lagged in Japan, the grind doesn't stop. An hour or so of train journey later and we have finally arrived. The door opened and there was Mom. It had been 10 years. Hisashiburi! We exchanged greetings and I was hit with the first real Japanese conversation test. Breakfast is a feast of 5 or 6 courses. Each one is tastier than the one before. Mom makes an effort to speak slowly and I understand everything. As long as she doesn't use super advanced vocabulary, which she does. All the time. When I ask to clarify, she repeats the exact same phrase, slowly. With the same words I still don't know. The exact same ones, but slower. This happens a lot. At first, I tried so hard to understand every single word, but exhaustion kicks in, and my comprehension lags. It was like my brain needed an extra 5 seconds to process everything. And yet, Mom compliments me immediately. Your pronunciation has improved so much. That was huge. Daily shadowing was paying off. I spent the rest of the day alternating watching Doraemon and mostly listening to family talk. I'm clearly struggling with both comprehension and speaking. Low vocabulary is an obvious culprit here. On the other hand, simple vocab aimed at children coupled with the ability of being able to read Japanese subtitles while watching Doraemon is a huge help. 7 p.m. Finally, sushi time. Good sushi is rare and pricey in the UK, so I had waited years for this. The place is tiny. Just 2 tables and a small counter that might squeeze in 8, maybe 10 people. The owner, a gentleman in his 60s, prepares the sushi while his wife handles the service. A TV hums in the background, adding to the homely, cozy atmosphere. Sushi is served 1 piece at a time, based on what's fresh that day. After the set course, customers can order extra from the selection. It's exactly the kind of place I love, filled with locals, mostly regulars, all greeted by name. Seated at the counter, we strike up a conversation with the owner. I understand most of it and even manage a basic chat about where I'm from, how bad sushi is in the UK, and how much I've been looking forward to this meal. Drinking highball probably helps. I'm less self-conscious about making mistakes. I still ask my partner to clarify a few things now and then, but overall, I'm happy with how much I understand. I'm tipsy, wide awake, and thoroughly enjoying myself. The moment we get back home, I'm out like a light. In Japan, you spend a lot of time on trains. My favorite activity? Reading station signs and ads, testing my comprehension. Within a couple of days, I had memorized all the usual train signs and the station names we frequented. As for the ads, some were completely incomprehensible, while others I could piece together surprisingly well. If you're visiting Japan, I highly recommend this. You'll see the same ads repeatedly, creating a natural spaced repetition effect. Plus, it's not like you have much else to do on the train. On our third day in Japan, I was on a mission to acquire Nintendo Switch to acquire Japanese. It was time for Akihabara. Loud, packed, and built to drain your wallet. The exchange rate was fantastic, but the infamous Akihabara tax was in full effect. After hopping from shop to shop, we finally found Geo Store running the promotion, 40% off used Switch models. My partner smirked. Go ahead. Let's see if you manage to spend our money or fail miserably. Unlike most shops, the attendants here seem determined to avoid customer interaction. A red flag in hindsight. I approached one of them and asked about the offer. Numbers are my weak point in Japanese, so instead of saying the exact price, I just said 14,000 yen, instead of 14 with change. He corrected me, confirmed the deal, and promptly returned to ignoring me. I finally got his attention again and asked to see the models. He sighed, pulled a plastic box from the shelf and placed it on the counter. Wrong models. I asked again. Another sigh. He swapped them. I asked if any came with accessories. No, just the consoles. Can I test them? He gestured vaguely and went back to whatever he was doing. After rummaging through a bunch of dead consoles, I finally found one in perfect condition. Scanning everything in to complete the purchase, attendant casually mentioned, "Oh, by the way, the Switch has no Wi-Fi. No refunds, everything here is sold as junk." Wait, what? Where does it say no Wi-Fi? He pointed to a tiny sticker on the back. Among various details it said NA next to Wi-Fi. I had assumed that meant no issues. Nope, it meant it didn't work. Okay, can I see the ones with working Wi-Fi? Back to the junk box. The only other switch that turned on was completely scratched up. The rest were still dead. We apologize for the inconvenience. You're welcome to wait for them to charge. For the first time in this entire interaction, I felt an echo of the service I came to expect in Japan. Nah, I'm good. My Japanese wasn't perfect, but I had explained myself clearly. Certainly better than the French group next to me who were struggling in English. Yet the entire interaction had been a battle. It wasn't just about understanding, it was also about not letting the frustration get the best of me. Nursing a sour taste in my mouth, we headed to the ramen shop and teeth cleaning appointment. And so, I found myself standing in front of my favorite ramen-ya in Ebisu. Back when we lived just 5 minutes away, this was my go-to spot. I used to be able to order my usual even if I couldn't read the menu properly. There was just one small problem. The shop was still there, but a different chain had taken over. Oh, and I hadn't ordered food in Japan in 10 years. We stepped inside, greeted by the familiar savory aroma of ramen. Irashaimase! It wasn't too busy, so we grabbed a table and picked up the menu. My partner looked at me expectantly. Time to put my reading to the test. Slowly, I worked through the options. After settling on a miso ramen base, I chose the shop's special. Everything on it. When the attendant arrived, I read out my order, a little slowly but clearly. She responded with a question, and my mind instantly went blank. Sumimasen? Moichido? She repeated it, but I still didn't get it. I turned to my partner, my brain fully checked out, hoping for salvation. Turns out, attendant was asking if we wanted rice or gyoza with our ramen. Oh, I quickly replied, "Kekko desu," and felt a mix of relief and embarrassment. To be fair, the shop was a bit loud and she had rattled off the question automatically. Maybe, if I had more experience ordering, I could have caught it without really listening. On the bright side though, I managed to navigate most of the menu without help. And I was quietly proud of that. As for the ramen, amazing, because it was my first in 10 years. Otherwise, it was fine. Ever thought about getting your teeth cleaned, polished and whitened in Japan? Well, if you already registered at a dental clinic, it is surprisingly simple. Walk in, lie back, and enjoy a free Japanese listening exercise. The best part? You don't have to talk much. Just nod and occasionally say, "Ite!" Would I have been able to fill out the initial registration form in Japanese? Absolutely not. But thankfully that had been taken care of 13 years ago. In all seriousness, I appreciate that most people wouldn't be in a position to do this, but I figured it was finally time to get my teeth cleaned. My better half went first and left me sitting in the reception waiting for my fate. So from the call-in to the end, I was on my own. To my surprise, I understood 90% of what was being said. Basic instructions like sit here, when was your last whitening, and rinse and spit. Right after my ramen ordering fumble, this was a much-needed confidence boost. Since we planned to move back to Japan eventually, we took this trip as an opportunity to explore potential places to live. Our main criteria? Outside Tokyo, but close enough to visit family. One area that caught our eye was Yamanashi-ken. Just an hour and a half from Shinjuku by express train, compact, breathtakingly beautiful, and far enough from Tokyo for a slower pace, while still being convenient. Kofu Basin is surrounded on all sides by mountains, which you can see from anywhere you are, Kofu being the prefectural capital. We booked an Airbnb in Kofu for a few days while exploring. The booking was in English, but once we arrived, everything was in Japanese. Our hosts, a lovely mother and son who had just moved to Kofu from Kawasaki 6 months prior, welcomed us warmly. I was a bit anxious about my comprehension, especially since this was old-school kind of Airbnb, where you stay in the same house as the owners. The mother loved to chat, and to my surprise, I was able to grasp about 50 to 80% of our conversations. While I still struggled to express myself, understanding was becoming easier. We learned about their lives, her son's cram school, the best spots to visit, and how 3 houses next door were Akia's, abandoned houses, just waiting for someone like us to buy them. She even suggested we start an Airbnb together and be good neighbors. Beyond their kindness, the biggest takeaway for me was realizing that I could follow the flow of conversations even if I didn't catch every detail. I let my better half handle most of the speaking, but I was starting to feel the rhythm of Japanese conversations. Really huge confidence boost. The next 2 days were spent exploring Yamanashi, and that meant one thing: stepping into Fudosanya, real estate agency, and facing my usual question: will I understand anything that Fudosanya-san says? Back in the UK, I have been researching houses in Japan entirely in Japanese, so I had picked up some relevant vocabulary. I could follow the general flow of conversation, but as soon as the things got technical, I was lost. However, after visiting 8 different houses, the natural SRS effect kicked in. Similar terms kept repeating, and I started understanding more. By the end, I was even able to ask basic questions and grasp most of the agent's explanations. Far from becoming fully proficient, the progress was noticeable, and that alone felt like a win. Back in Tokyo, it was time for round 2 of my Nintendo Switch adventure. This time, we went to Geo in Ikebukuro, a much quieter, more presentable store than Akihabara one. And spoiler alert, the service was amazing. I've done this before on day 3, I can do this again on day 13. With confidence, I went up to the display in the used section, found the OLED Switch and games I wanted, Shinchan and Shadowverse for those interested. Checked the special offer with attendant, confirmed the price using proper Japanese numbers, and successfully completed my purchase. Smooth. Then, the tax-free conversation started. Cue panic. I need help! Turns out, tax-free status negated the special offer, so I had to do some quick calculations and realized the deal was actually better without tax-free. This led to reversing the transaction, reapplying it, and going through the whole process again. Despite this, the attendant was incredibly patient and kind, a complete contrast to the Akihabara store. Not once did she make me feel like I was causing a hassle. Oh, and if there is anything wrong with the console or games, come back within 10 days and you get a refund or replacement. At the end of it all, I had my Switch, my games, and another huge confidence boost. Apart from a tax confusion, I had handled everything myself, and that felt amazing. With just 2 days left in Japan, there was one major item on my must-eat list: Oyakodon. It's nearly impossible to find a good one for a reasonable price in the UK, and making it at home is a hassle. I needed it. After some internet scouring, we found a highly rated yakitori izakaya spot just a short walk away. The moment we stepped inside, the smoky aroma of grilled chicken hit us. We were ravenous. We ordered half the menu, had a few drinks, and I finally got my perfect Oyakodon. Completely satisfied, I called over the owner and asked for the check. He stared at me blankly. I repeated my request. Still nothing. Then something seemed to click for the owner. I leaned back in my chair, satisfied. Bunny, you've just asked him twice for the ceiling. My face went crimson. Otenjo, ceiling, and okanjo, check, might sound similar, but they mean completely different things. What a perfect way to wrap up the trip. I was getting better, but this was a reminder to stay humble, keep studying, and push forward towards fluency. So, looking back at my experience in Japan, was 9 months enough? Enough for what is the real question. I could probably get by, getting things in the shops, ordering in restaurants, and getting electronics. I would not be able to hold anything but the simplest of conversations, though. Even if my understanding definitely far surpasses my speaking ability. But at 9 months, it is as it should be. So I'm not worried about that. My biggest success towards the end of 20 days in Japan was the realization that I can grasp the gist of most conversations, if not the particulars. Coupled with my gains in pronunciation, this led my Japanese family assume that my Japanese is far better than it actually is. I'll take it. Fake it till you make it, as they say. My biggest struggle was whenever someone would directly address me and ask me questions. I would panic, draw blank, ask to repeat the question. The particulars and details all of a sudden become super important. Being able to express my thoughts after being so flustered, as you can imagine, is extremely hard. My biggest surprise, how much more I could understand with Japanese subtitles compared to without. I watched a lot of Doraemon while in Japan. Now that the trip is done, I realized that with speaking, I was definitely better 10 years ago. On the flip side, I've definitely surpassed my previous level in pronunciation, listening, and reading comprehension. It's hard to cover the full trip in such a short video. There were many more fails and triumphs in these 20 days. Like the time we went to an izakaya was dead and couldn't hear anything sitting next to each other due to how loud and crowded it was. Yeah, many more situations that I could convey here. But the takeaway is 9 months of studies was worth it for certain. Not enough by a long shot, but definitely worth it. So, what is next? There are a few takeaways from the trip. The main ones: I need more vocabulary and to immerse listening with Japanese subtitles. So, finishing up Kaishi 1.5k, a popular Anki deck for Japanese learners, and starting to do sentence mining before hitting the big 12 months mark is a priority. And to have more fun with acquiring the language. Being excited to sit down for a Japanese session will keep the momentum going forward. Have you visited Japan while learning the language? What was your experience? Share it below. I love reading and replying to your stories. Today's featured comment is from Any Granny OG, who left this on my 6 months update video. I am 48 and approaching my 5 years anniversary of starting to learn Japanese for real. Probably the best thing I have ever done for myself. The positive impact on my mental health has been extremely beneficial. I've learned whole new ways of thinking about things. It took me a while to get into the groove in the beginning. I spent some time learning how to learn, but I found a routine that I love and kept at it. I haven't skipped a single day since I started. You're never too old. Thank you so much for the comment, Any Granny OG, for your inspiring words and all the great advice you've shared in the conversation that followed. Learning how to learn is, of course, key, and mental health always comes first. On that note, take care of yourself and each other, and I'll see you in the next one. それじゃあまたね。バイバイ。